Can we have the roll call, please?
Dr. Bristol,
Present.
Mrs. Patterson,
Present.
Mrs. Pinder, Mrs. Walker,
Present.
and Mr. Browning.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the committee minutes? Did you have a chance to see the minutes? Okay, let's take a minute to review the minutes then, please.
So I'm not going to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question before we proceed. I don't see anything outlining what was old business. Is that something that we can address now or later, or how do you want to proceed with that?
So you're looking for something that addressed old business?
Yes, some way for us to be able to look over what, at some point in the meeting tonight, what we did last time, as a means of being able to ensure that we're covering everything and nothing is overlooked.
Okay. Well, let's have a motion and then we can have that discussion.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion to request that we discuss how it is that we can add old business to the meeting agendas, starting with this one.
Is there a second? So we have the motion made to approve the minutes, and we're going to have discussion. Is there a second?
There you go. Second.
All right, thank you. Open for discussion.
So my question is that what I'm noticing is we just keep moving forward, and with what are the documents that come in, especially last minute, the day of. I do understand that some things come as a result of what's available when it's available, but that doesn't give us enough time to go through it. And then if the agenda is already set, we have no capacity really to go back and talk about it unless it's by chance brought up in passing in a discussion. So I want to request that we make an amendment to our agendas and discuss even how they are organized, like how is this compiled, because we have no capacity. I mean, I might have been able to say something if there was an opportunity for us to discuss it, but since this is the only platform to do it, this would be the time to bring it up.
Okay. What do you suggest?
You were nodding. Did you want to say something?
No, I agree.
Okay.
It was it's a major barrier when you receive things the day before. And we can attribute that to a number of things.
Right.
But I feel that one way to be able to do that is to establish an agenda at the end of our meetings.
Okay.
That way we'll know what it is that we're to discuss at the next meeting, and it gives us ample time, all of us as a committee, to voice and to request and to, gather those resources. So I think a good way is to, again, structure that agenda at the end of tonight's meeting and the meetings going forward, figure out what it is we want to do, and have ample time to require those resources, and also to set a deadline. Like, we need to have all resources, like, after a certain time, there needs to be a cutoff at some point.
Right.
So is that 2 weeks before the meeting? Is it a week before? I mean, that's something that we should definitely discuss, but I think that's a start.
Sounds good.
I also think that as a part of best practice, there should be on a meeting agenda what is old business, just as much as you have a call to order or, approval of minutes, that there should be a category here for old business. Even if there is nothing to cover, that's fine, and we can set that up certainly at the end. The only issue that I have about it being done at the end of the meeting is that, depending on how long the meeting runs, are we even in the capacity to really talk about what the next agenda should be? I would prefer, obviously, to have a fresh mind to do it. I don't know how we can collaborate to make that happen, but just in wanting to dot i's and cross t's, I just think that, before we go any further, that we should put this out on the table, since it's the first time I've had an opportunity to really come together with everyone in this forum.
Sounds very good, because it's kind of difficult when I think you asked me a question, and then Ms. Davis said, sunshine, you can't ask him a question or whatever. So it makes it a little bit difficult to kind of pass information like that. So that sounds like a very good start, and we can work it out. It's not perfect yet, and we'll make changes and kind of get there.
So we don't, well, I'm not going to say what we can and cannot do. I'm going to ask.
Whatever, go ahead.
Just before we move further into the agenda, I would like for there to be an opportunity to go over old business, because I would like clarification on a couple of things, anything that I may have overlooked, or maybe one of you may still have outstanding questions that you need answers to, especially with all the documents that just came in. I cannot just presume that my questions are going to be asked in the documents I have. And by the time I go over them at home and we have the next meeting, there's no guarantee that those issues would not already be resolved or continuing in another capacity that otherwise could have been remedied tonight.
Okay, so do you want to amend the agenda so that, make a motion to amend the agenda so that we have an old business section for tonight, maybe after approval of the minutes? Is that?
I would like to make an amendment I would like to make a motion to have an amendment made to the agenda such that we can add what is old business, and that this would be something to have as a part of the formal outline moving forward.
Second.
Have an amendment and a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we are back to the approval of the minutes, and
I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
all right.
I'll go ahead and second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion to approve the minutes and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, now, let's see. So old business,
Old business.
yes.
So we just talked about what is akin to a document dump when you get this much information the day of. It's not reasonable to give us adequate time to go through it thoroughly and to ensure that we can closely review what's here, what's missing, what needs to be added, to question or query deeper, and along with what are the other items on the agenda and presentations, it just bottlenecks any matters that otherwise can be brought to the fore. So that is old business that I think that we've discussed, but I do appreciate that there are times and there will be instances where something may be revised or something may come out, but these are hundreds of pages of materials.
Well understood, well taken. I take the entire blame for that. These were the things that I had noticed and wanted to bring forward, and I thought, I think it was a miscommunication with me, misunderstanding on my part that the agenda had been sent out when you asked that question, and Ms. Davis was waiting for me to do something, so I definitely apologize. I take ownership for that. This is not mine, so it's not when you say thousands of pages, that's not my thousands. I have some stuff related that that you have in front of you, and it's fine not to. I think for next time we'll definitely have sufficient amount of time to look at what's there, and I think some of this we have to let's see, process, because it's, as you start looking and digging and research, it becomes more and more.
That's right.
And then as I gave information, there were some questions as to, somebody was expecting some more, and looking, and I wanted to give a full picture. So,
And I want to expound on what Ms. Patterson said, because I agree, if we can get our documents at least a week in advance, that is reasonable, that's fair.
yes. All right, well, we're going to go through, and I think the process is to go through Ms. Davis to, if you want to add something or consider something, and we'll just have to work it out there.
Okay.
'Cause I'm not the guru
So-
at this. It's like, that's my second meeting, so.
So just in consideration of Ms. Davis, so I think that we should also, if we're going to ask for it a week before the meeting, we should also kind of give her time to be able to collect that information. So I think would it be a week? Would it be 2 weeks for her to be able to, or whomever is being asked to provide the information? I don't think we should say the day before, this is due. We need to just make sure we're mindful of the time that it takes for the district to pull it together.
Just to clarify, it was a week, that's the cutoff. You can no longer add or request
Gotcha.
additional information. Now, from the adjournment of tonight's meeting,
Yes.
we will have a structure for an agenda, and from tomorrow going forward, up until a week before the next meeting, is the time frame to request whatever documents, artifacts, what have you, that we would need for the next meeting. So that would be a cutoff.
For us to request the information, right?
Yes.
So then what about, what we're saying is we got all this information today and yesterday that we needed time to process that. So if we're asking for it to be cut off a week, that gives her time to bring it to us. That doesn't give us time to digest it, right?
So I'm thinking, I've never requested information from Ms.
Neither
Davis.
have I.
But just going back to you, Mr. Browning, I don't know what the turnaround is, but I'm thinking that it should be reasonable if we request it on a Monday. Does it generally take a week, 2 weeks to get the information? Because from what I gathered in the emails, it was requested, some of it was requested,
I've been talking about some of it for a while.
right? And
Yes.
so just, again, because I'm not familiar with the turnaround, you're more knowledgeable with that.
Yes.
What would that, or what do we
That
want
would be
to look like?
fine to have a few days before, and I think we can, if there's something that you feel like is pressing or an emergency, we can also always ask Ms. Davis to poll the rest of us, poll the board, and see if that's okay to add it.
Right.
Because there are some things that are a necessary part of this discussion.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we've done the minutes and the old business, and anything else under the old business? Dr. Wright?
I think we can kind of pick it up in between
Okay,
with other
all
things,
right.
yes.
Can I
Well-
ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, with the old business, should we have a structure for that? Is it here's my question, and, because sometimes we can go down a rabbit hole, and we can, so how should we structure in addressing the old business?
I have to admit that, this isn't necessarily teased out as thoroughly either. So just for me, just having there being a bullet to acknowledge it, we can speak to or annotate for ourselves what it is we would like to go over. I'm not going to request a formal structure. I don't know that that's necessary. But if I find that to be the case, I'll definitely make a motion in the next meeting.
Definitely. Certainly flexible. Well, before we get really started, I'd like to say a special thank you to the Rosewood staff for the wonderful job they did last week with the situation that they were put in. And also thank you to our first responders acting to make sure the students and teachers were safe. The information and messages were timely and helpful. And at some point, I called Ms. Norris after getting those messages. And as a parent, you kind of start freaking out just a little bit. But the information came. It was very good, accurate, and it calmed me down, even though I had already called Ms. Norris and she returned my call. So thank you to the district staff for keeping the kids safe, because you kind of freak out when you get those calls. or somebody tells you something's going on. Tonight, hopefully we'll have a chance to hear from the district through Ms. Hofer regarding some information. We had a chance to chat and had a wonderful conversation. And then later, you know, as we present information, we'd like to invite and hear concerns from the other partner of the district, the NAACP, with what they feel like, you know, has been brought to their attention. And hopefully that's something we might be willing to get to happen. Update on recommendations, old business, sort of. The last time we met, we recommended, at the last equity meeting, we voted, and as the previous committee before us did, to ask the school board to approve the 2019 recommendations that were at a previous workshop. However, last week when I attended the workshop discussion, it was decided, seems like that it would be better to say that these recommendations were being worked on or implemented in a strategic plan. Now, where I see the problem with that is strategic plans can and do change, sometimes with the wind or on a whim. They can change next week or when a new superintendent comes. So the question is, again, in my heart, if we are serious about this work as we say we are, what is the problem with putting them in the joint plan? No answer needed right there, but that's the question. There's also a discussion about suspensions, which we'll get through with the information that was produced last week, about and black students being 3 times more likely to be suspended than their white counterparts, if I have that information correct. And the goal presented was where black students are only 2 times as likely to be suspended. So we have to reevaluate, I think, as a mindset, because what comes to my mind is and is that acceptable? To which one of the board members corrected that the goal should be much less, like 0. So, you know, hopefully we can change the thinking, and because without it, just like with strategic plan stuff, we'll make a couple of slight gains in one area, and we'd be shortly thereafter without real commitment. Our district and community, in my opinion, would be worse off than before.
Can you go back to the commentary that you were making regarding the decision to include the recommendations from the last committee into a strategic plan?
Yes, there were some recommendations that were made by Mershawn and the committee, and then we looked at those too. And in order to make it stronger, we thought that they took it to the board. The board had a workshop. Dr. Moxley, I believe, was the interim superintendent, worked up a sheet based on.
Right, this one here, right?
Yes, I think they had the recommendations. Yes.
Okay, this one.
Nope, that's the inaugural committee report.
Oh, okay,
There's one
sorry.
that says recommendations, and then there's a yellow and something chart that has what Dr. Moxley worked up. It was given to us the last time. I apologize.
Oh, okay, that one, okay. This one here,
Yes.
okay.
And so, so we asked again that the board take a look at that, and it was told that it wasn't voted on, so we wanted them to vote on it,
Yeah.
commit to it.
Yeah.
And so it didn't happen. And I just think that a stronger commitment needed would be sufficient, because, like I said, somebody leaving, I mean, we might have wonderful people in this district right now, but when they're gone
Right,
and another person comes in, the mindset and the actions change.
right. Well, the work can't be lost. I mean, it's years of work, and it's all that we have at present to go on. So the last thing that I understood, even based on the initial documentation that we received, is that this was supposed to be voted on. So
Yes, ma'am.
that hasn't happened, and if it's not happening, why would there even be a discussion about compiling it into another report? That sounds disingenuous to me.
My sentiments exactly.
Okay.
So I would hope that, as the board is listening, that, and I just really met you. I don't know how long you've been here. For me, 50 years.
Wow.
So I've lived this, And there are people who have left this district to go to St. Lucie and become principals, teachers, principals, and retired down there with A schools. And there's a gentleman here who left here and got a $10,000 raise. I remember Mr. Seymour. They offered him some more money, and he left, and glad he came back. But there were many more names who left this district because of lack of opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I'm concerned about the fidelity to the documents, because if we are operating under the pretext of what is here, then we don't have allowance or license to do other than what is here. So you can't change that, like, you can't change the music midway in the dance on us like this without giving us, some kind of guidance. I mean, why would we agree to that arrangement? Why would we think that that would be equitable or reasonable? That doesn't make any sense. If none of the governing documents for the work that we do has been altered, why would we make that abrupt change or pivot? I would like to have this voted on, because it's what we've been working with thus far. It's what we understand to be the work of the previous committee and upon which we should be building. I mean, there's been no open objection to it to say that it's faulty in this way, it's lacking substance, because that's the discussion we want to have. I don't anticipate that they would agree on everything, but I would anticipate that there would be a vote to
Yes.
say that they adopt portions of it or none of it, and then that gives us something to work with. Otherwise, we're blowing in the wind.
And you just made a very valid point. As an educator, I look at the recommendations, and they are just that, they are recommendations, right? But when this is an educational system. So when looking through the lens of an educator, we do things, we make goals that are called SMART goals, right? They're specific, they're measurable, they're attainable, they're relevant, and they're time-oriented or specific. And as an educator, looking at the recommendations, I'm not and would never dishonor the work, because it is tremendous work. It is laborious.
Right.
But when you're going to a school board, they're looking through those lenses as educators. So that's why initially I wanted to, again, as the new committee, to again, through your lens and your gifts and your talents and expertise, mine, Ms. Walker's, and yours, to make certain that they are tight and they're not infallible, as you said. There's nothing, they're specific, and they're fully educationally oriented, if that makes sense. So I think that's been the barrier. I haven't watched every meeting, but the ones that I have watched, I mean, we're at an impasse here. So I think a good thing to do would be is to go back and look and make certain that, again, we are looking through the lens of education, we are considering these things, we're making certain that they are tight, they are measurable, they are specific, and we go about it and approach it through that way.
I don't disagree, but what I will add is that the work outlined for us is three-pronged. It is both monitoring, documenting compliance, and then making recommendations. So the board before us presumably has done that. This is what this document states. So I would anticipate if they've made the recommendations and the guidance up to now has been, if we're going to honor what has been established, that they would vote. So that would give me then a standing and an understanding, rather, of what it is that they see or don't see. I think that the language as it is written certainly could be tailored to that of, the profession more, speaking our jargon, but I don't think that the substance of the material is lost because it's not written in, the vernacular of, educators. I don't think that, it's a miss. So it would be helpful to hear those things that the board are looking at, because my presumption is if they're voting something down, they're saying because we've already done it, or we plan to do it this way. Or if they're adopting what is here, they're saying that they're adopting it because they believe that it works. And in order for me to fairly do these things I just outlined, the first step is to acknowledge what is the work that's been done previously. So.
And at the workshop last week, the board didn't discuss it.
Okay.
There was no discussion. When the previous board had a workshop and discussed it and asked the superintendent at the time, Dr. Moxley, to see what would cost money and what was easily done. And she worked out the chart that's in yellow that we were given. And it, at some point, seemed like it should have come back to the board and been voted on. And that's what we asked for last
The
time.
last meeting that we had, that I
Yes.
attended virtually, there was a discussion, and that was brought up, that that was what next steps would be. I was anticipating meeting today, or some of what were the documents coming in, that something would have highlighted that this is what has been adopted. So you're saying this now, and it's the first time that I'm reconciling that, you know.
Right, right. Nothing, no action was taken. The superintendent spoke and said it was in the, and if he, if Dr. Moore would like to, am I correct? No action was taken by the board. They didn't discuss it. You said it would be in a strategic plan, and that's correct?
Through the chair, yes, sir. And just to give a little bit of brief history, I feel like if you're turning your back, I'm sorry. I'm moving the whole camera. What I brought to the board was the 53 recommendations and created a crosswalk for the board. And what that document had highlighted is those 53 recommendations were made to the previous superintendent, previous board, matter of fact, and then upon my arrival, walked into a situation where we had 53 recommendations, we had no African American achievement plan, and we had an irrelevant strategic plan. So my first course of action was to create the African American Achievement Plan because, as you all know, that is a document that is required within the joint plan. Created that, had it approved by the board, which was required, supposed to be approved by the start of the school year. It was February when it was created and then ultimately approved by the board. Then COVID hit basically 2 weeks later after that. We continued to engage in the conversation and the dialogue to create a new strategic plan. The strategic plan is incorporating overwhelming number of those recommendations. It includes them into that specific plan. It also includes a number of things that were not discussed prior to my arrival. And there were things that through the problem solving and team process, through conversation and dialogue, we thought there were different things that we can do to enhance this particular work. You mentioned Mr. Seymour. That was an office that we created to ensure that there was advocacy across this system and there was consistency in terms of athletics and activities. Major areas within the plan that's before you, but a little slight different way of ensuring that we have the leadership and the human resources available really to begin to manage and mind that work moving forward. Another area that has been a bone of contention and really just done in the absolute wrong and unjust way was the hiring of African American teachers. So we created an office that was recruitment and retention. And that office had a rough start because it started in the midst of a pandemic. But now it is functioning on all cylinders, and we're beginning to see significant traction in that particular area. And we're very proud of the progress that we're making. We're not done. We're nowhere close to being done. But those are just two examples of things that were done. So the information that I brought to the board was to fully honor the work that had been done. It has been monumental. It has been significant. It was, you said, inaugural report. It was the creation and foundation of something had not been done before. And the design of it allowed me to come in, and it paid significant insight to me in the creation of those specific plans. And I would ask, and very sincerely and humbly, that those recommendations that you all would make and put it on me, solely on my back, to complete that cycle. And that's really what's missing. And that's one of the frustrations that Mr. Browning is expressing. It definitely is a frustration of Mershawn Green, who was the chair previously. It's definitely a frustration of the NAACP, is we're not seeing completion or closure in regards to those recommendations that we had made. And that is just the truth, and I honor that. But we've got to complete the cycle. And my commitment to you, the community, is when you all make your recommendations through the input and conversations that you have, you'll be able to specifically see where our annual targets for the strategic plan are incorporated. It is there, it's not there. We don't have to go back 18 months, and in the midst of that 18 months, there was a pandemic and 3 different instructional models, all kinds of things that I want to engage in that dialogue as well. And I think that completes the cycle. And there are a number of opportunities where I think both we can come to consensus relatively quickly in creating specific targets within that joint plan that we mutually agree upon. All we have to do, you agree, we agree, take it to the board, approve it, and send it to the courts to update those specific areas in which we agree. And I'm looking forward to mediation, because I think those are some of the things that we're going to talk about. These would be opportunities to increase the expectation or increase some of the outcomes identified within that joint plan. And I think those are some of the things that we want to include. I think Mr. Browning makes the example, and I'll be finished, I'm sorry, I don't want to be too long, regarding the percent of African American teachers at school. And the plan itself says 1. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. And we've been able to, through Ms. Hofer's leadership and working with principals, begin to see traction in that particular area. But that is just managing those numbers. And I think it's come to sense. Let's put that in the plan. If we agree it's 17 plus or minus 3, then let's go. Let's do it. And those are some of the things that we can do when we create the system and the cycles to engage in this complex conversation. So I understand is there a lack of commitment from the district? Absolutely not. Did the organizational structure shift and modify? Absolutely it did. And did we incorporate it into what should be the district's driving force? And I know Mr. Browning said superintendents come and go. That's the truth. Broward. But when you look at what drives the work, and strategic plans come and go as well, and you're right there. This strategic plan, sir, is my evaluation. It's 100% replicated. If I don't hit those annual targets, I don't meet my annual evaluation. I don't think there's another superintendent that is that bold to say, I'm going to put my outcome, my future employment, right there on that piece of paper. And I'm saying to this committee, let's engage in the dialogue to have those conversations to recreate those annual targets. So in the redesign, it is different, but I think we can complete the cycle and really begin to move this work forward.
I want to be clear, I'm not suggesting that we not move forward. I'm here because I want to move forward, and I want to believe that everyone is of like mind, and I don't believe that the district is not wanting to move forward. I can see that you're trying to do so. My concern is the amount of time and work that is put in here, we don't get back. We don't get an opportunity necessarily to, to redo it. This is information that we will not be able to recapture. So I would like to honor it for the sake of building on it and then move forward. Right now, it feels like we're putting the cart in front of the horse. There needs to be a vote on this so that we can know specifically what you're putting in the strategic plan is actually working or will work or that they approve. Otherwise, we create a strategic plan that later on we'll find out, well, they didn't really approve that portion of it, or they didn't really like that particular element, which is unfair to us because it doesn't allow us to have full transparency about what they really wanted or thought would be useful or what's working, especially if we're new as a committee coming to the table. I can only trust the data that I have presently.
No, I agree with you, but I don't want to mislead anybody. Those 53 recommendations fully accepted, fully appreciated, and then having an item that says we accept these 53 recommendations and we'll use them and used them to incorporate into our strategic plan. I don't think there's anyone who isn't genuine or any school board member who wouldn't accept that. Yeah. Then I think we have a better process moving forward because as you make your recommendations, you're meeting more timely. You have not more time. You're making those recommendations in real time. So as you make recommendations coming in the next 3 or 6 months, I will be taking prior to the opening of schools. Here, board, is my evaluation and our annual targets for the upcoming school year, and then clearly defining this is the recommendations that were made, incorporated into this annual target. And it'll be clearly there, and you'll have the opportunity, not on the back end, not a year later, to say, no, Dr. Moore, I don't agree. The way this is written, I don't necessarily agree. And truth be told, as you look at something a year later, it is left to interpretation. So instead of engaging in the frequency of conversation, and then, there was a transition from a completely different leader with a completely different set of expectations and design, yes, that is part of the difference. But by no means does this board, to a T, to a person, not want to engage in these conversations to ensure that we are fully aligned. And I think the strategic plan is the way to do that and does in fact capture it. And when there are smart, specific goals, as it was being mentioned, I do think that would be the opportunity mediation to say, I'll use the 17% because it is a very specific expectation. Let's put it in the plan. Let's put it in the plan. And
I will also add that because this is tied to an active or open lawsuit, having that vote, for me, confirms that we are working with documents that we can say full-throated, they approve this, we're building
Yes.
on this, or they don't approve this, and we can go forward to what it is that you're speaking to.
I
That's
agree
fine.
with that.
And I agree with the way in which you just said it. We accept them. Now, to say that we're going to implement each and every single one
No, no,
as
no,
they
no.
are written,
Right.
No.
and
That's
I
not
don't
what
want
we're
to
saying.
mislead anybody, so we're on the same page.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, but because of the legal aspect of it, we want to make sure that we're making recommendations or adding to recommendations or revising recommendations based on having a vote. Then that way, even as the strategic plan is being outlined, they can be confident and we can be confident that this is something that we voted on. And it's not left for the presumption, well, they didn't shoot it down, so they must have agreed because it was incorporated. That sort of, implication is not something that I want. I want something more concrete. I want to vote, yeah.
So you're saying you want the board to vote on it?
It would,
Is that what yeah?
that is
That
what
sounds
I'm
like what I
saying.
heard.
I mean, I can't imagine
Recommendation.
any other way for them to make clear that they're adopting it other
So
than
you're
to vote.
saying,
Yeah.
sounds like I hear you saying, tell me if I'm
Am
wrong,
I getting in trouble?
that the previous committee did the work.
Yeah.
And they asked the board to vote.
Yeah,
We looked at it and we asked the board to vote.
yeah,
And there's been-
And we think the board should vote
right,
to accept it.
yeah.
Because to me, it sounds like I'm standing beside Dr. King and he's going, if not now, then when?
Right.
And they're saying you're asking for justice too soon. 53 years, too soon. And that is, I tell you, that's the angst that I have, if any. I had, and I'll tell you, as this conversation rolls on, that I had a positive conversation on yesterday with Ms. Hofer and some of the ideas that looks like she's bringing forward. And it looks like the district wants to go in the positive direction. But without that vote,
That's right.
it is, to me, it's, Lord forgive me, it's like a snake oil salesman. It's like just talk that doesn't mean to commit to anything. And we're not playing with paper. We're playing with people's lives, lives who had to leave an area, go get a job somewhere else, children who are affected. And I'll tell you right now, I met with a very professional person, extremely professional, and I went to school with one of his brothers, and the person said to me, Kevin, we had more black teachers in our system and in Vero Beach High School in the 1980s when it was more acceptable to be discriminatory. And some of those, I made some notes. Mr. Lunsford, Lumpkins, Wanza Murray, Mr. and Mrs. Bradley, the Thorntons, Washingtons, so many more. And then he said, my kids have gone all the way through school, and they have not had a black teacher. So if you're in a neighborhood where it's not totally integrated, and your friends are not totally integrated with you, your school, you never see a black person as far as a teacher, you might see some custodians, and it's sad that we even have to have this discussion here right now and to make it so visible. So I think if you want to, I think we can we come back to this?
Well, we have
Mr.
to,
Chair.
because I don't know what. Go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
someone.
Did somebody say something?
It's Pender.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Isn't the African American Achievement Plan and strategic plan, they are not the joint plan, but they are a sub-part of it?
I'm sorry, Mrs. Pender. I can't hear you very well. I hate this Teams or Zoom or whatever this thing is. It sometimes goes in and out.
My
you could say it
question
again.
is,
Yes,
isn't
ma'am.
the African American Achievement Plan and the a strategic plan, they are not the joint plan, but aren't they sub-parts of the joint plan?
I would consider they are subparts of the joint plan.
No, okay.
And I've asked to, let's see, come back at that. And I'll say again, we have made progress before and became an A district. When we were making progress, we were at the top of our game with the dedication to equity hiring. Can we take a look, next item, a look at hiring? And I think it'll give us, we know what the hiring history has been, but I didn't ask for these documents. I asked for everything as a whole. And what I've provided you, Ms. Davis has given it to you, and I've given it to you in a spreadsheet here. And we'll just start with elementary schools. And if you could look and tell me if this is equitable hiring. 5 years. So this looks back the last 5 years of hiring. You have, I think it's called, the last line you have says School B.
Yes.
Okay. Do you see right above that? In 5 years, you had one African-American hired in 2020 and one in 19.
Yes.
Okay. Sometimes I listen to old school music, so Jermaine Jackson had a song that said, "Don't take it personal. It's not about the people." Next one, School C. Out of all those that are there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. In 5 years, 20 teachers hired, one African American. So if somebody's telling me that we couldn't find African American teachers in 5 years.
I have a question. Did you disaggregate this for yourself by race or?
I disaggregated by all the teachers and by race and who was hired in the last 5 years. Now, there may have been somebody was hired and that they left, but then that adds another question too. So these are those who are still on staff, the year they were hired in the last 5 years, and what those hires look like. So we go to School D. I'm open for comments.
I have quite a few comments, but my comments are actually tied to the format of this document, because this is illegible. So it's great that you brought it in and you disaggregated it. And what I'm referring to is the fact that if we want to, I mean, did you draw it from this one originally? Which one was this?
I don't know what that is.
See,
Who gave you that?
this, the one from the last meeting?
Oh, okay.
Um,
So it's all employees, yes.
Okay, all employees. We need a format for these documents as they're being compiled, because this, again, is a lot of information that you can't weed through other than what you were able to pull out.
Yes.
And there's a way to organize this. I just think that even on the older document that I have, there are no page numbers, so if the stapler comes out, this is all lost. There's no way to really reorganize this. I see that it must be, I'm guessing it must be alphabetized by the location of the school, but if we're looking specifically for the data that we're interested in for this committee, then it should have been ideally aggregated out as you did it, by school on a separate page, highlighting or focusing on what is the race. This right now was just, it feels like someone went to the actual document and just hit Control P, print, and everything just came out. They stapled it and we got it. There's no date that indicates when it was printed, so I don't know the exact version I have. If you gave me another one, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the two documents. So some kind of format needs to be employed across the board with all of the documents that we get. APA, MLA, Chicago Manual Style, something that gives us continuity. We can't even cross-reference the documents because we don't know where they're drawn from. If it would be helpful if we knew what is the path, how it was saved, so that if there's a question about a document that cross-references another, chart or any other data, we could say, well, this one came from this source, or that one was pulled from this source, or it was aggregated out, because I'm getting this information here, and I only have the benefit of, deduction to see that, you probably got it from here, and you confirm that.
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
That thick document, when I first, I don't know if I asked Dr. Moore or Ms. Davis for the list of employees, every position, every school, whether they're by school, by race, by name, by salary, because I think that that's easier to pull sometimes, and I'm okay with Excel. I learned how to filter and pull out the information. So yes, that was just provided that's everybody. But these are...
I'm not objecting to having it, I'm just trying to be able to make sense of it. At any point when I'm pulling this out, I don't know if this is still current. If you gave me another one, you updated it, how would I be able to tell
Right.
if information,
I see what
people
you're saying.
retired, if they've quit, if they've left? How do I know that the document, the next one that you print out, is any different if these markers are not there? That's why we need a writing format. I mean, for example, if you look at the joint plan at the bottom, it clearly outlines that this is for the March 2021. I mean, it's on the header as well. This doesn't have any of that.
Got you. So it should say current employees of the school
Yes.
district as of such and such date.
Yes.
I understand what you're saying. And maybe I need to do a better job of asking like that. I think I did. But I said current employees, and I would assume that I would have gotten the current employees by that date when I asked for it.
And there are no page numbers either. I mean, it might sound like minutia, but it's important, because if you're combing through it and you're trying to make, fair recommendations to say that you have turned this document in, that you are compliant in this way, I have to be able to be certain that I'm looking at the most recent document to be able to make that determination. It seems with every meeting, there's going to be obviously lots of paperwork to go through, and that's par for the course, but, how do we separate it out? thank goodness the documentation that we received today outlines, clearly that there are page numbers now, so I can be confident that when I shift this out, that putting this in, at least, I can organize it.
Yes.
But, and I'm going to say that a couple more times, because I see you gave me this joint monthly plan progress monitoring report, and you numbered it, right? Like, why
Yeah,
wouldn't this
no.
have be numbered?
Yeah, that's correct. That came from Dr. Moore, that I didn't
Okay,
make.
well, Dr. Moore, thank you for numbering this.
Now, his didn't, I put the red numbers on it for myself and gave it to you, because when I refer to it, it'll be like, look at number one, here's what I think about number one.
That's
here's
my
number two.
point.
Dr. Moore.
That's my.
The information was, I just want to clarify, the information was requested and the ability to filter out, not being presented from the district. The district will have it stamped for time. Everything would include page numbers to ensure we've gone through there. So I wasn't aware it was going to be a public-facing document. It was requested to do, I think, what Mr. Browning is going through this exploration now,
Right.
to make some points, some key points, and use it as a source document for that research, but not necessarily something to present. But as we bring information forward, it will be clean, it will be relatively straightforward, which is a commitment we made since I got here.
Yes. So initially, when I asked for it, I wanted everything to be able to see for it myself, to pull it out, instead of asking them every single time, could you get me this school by this, and then that school by that, and it'd be so much work on the staff that it's almost unfair, to do it like that. So I want to, if I can get the information myself, and if they need to verify it, whatever, we can go certainly do that. And yeah, I hope so this is something that you understand, and you see that with School D, as we go on. I mean, I don't think that you've seen it like this. And I'm used to, when I was in HR here, this is what I had to monitor by school, making sure we followed along with the DSEG plan. I looked at custodial staff, I looked at cafeteria staff, I looked at coaches. What did the coaching staff look like? The head coaches, all of that. Every little piece to make sure that we had equity, or were moving towards equity in those areas. So this is kind of what I'm used to, and this is the most glaring. I don't know which page you're on, but you have I think I'm at School F now. And I know, I'm sorry if I'm going so fast, but if you just look down, just think about, and you can look at, I talked a little bit with Beth, asking some questions that, males in our elementaries, we don't see many males. So the little boys who might be struggling with issues in school, when do they see a black male? And I can guarantee you, I don't know how many, but FAMU, Florida State, Indian River State College, Bethune-Cookman College, they turn out black male educators and elementary educators. School G, got one in the middle. It's the same story over and over again to me. If you see something different, and if it doesn't make you really look and make the hair stand up on your head, then I don't know, something is just kind of wrong. School I, that's a lot of people hired over 5 years. 19,
one
and you get
19.
one? Okay. School L,
None.
none. The next one, P,
None.
none. R, last 5 years,
None.
none.
I think something that it's new to the district, we have a data collection system or application. It's Power BI. And something that I just learned about is now each school, all the principals are now, forced for lack of a better word, it's now very clear, these types of these numbers, this data is very clear to them. They see the ratio of each race, and they compare it to the races of the teachers that are at the schools. And they see when there's an imbalance. So it's
Hold on.
painfully obvious now
I
in
love
Power
what you're
BI.
saying, but,
I know, I was about to
Okay.
segue to
yeah.
Ms. Hofer.
But if she could hold on a little while, I
so
want
that
to
she
get
can-
through,
No, it's perfectly fine, so that she could speak
get through
to.
the bad news and let her,
So that she could speak to
Yes.
the things that are going on with the recruitment and those processes.
yeah, we talked about that. I'm waiting to hear that, but I do want, I apologize that, some of this stuff in between, sometimes I go between kids and two jobs and just going and doing things I like and then having to get this information to you. But, so you take a look at S, a little more decent. T,
1 and 15.
15 and 1 over 5 years. And then that should be V instead of T. A little more decent. Okay, then now if we could, I think, leave it to everybody but me. I think I have another one, okay. Now that was elementary. Middle.
See, headers would help even with this, because you're,
Yes, yes. You would have me get this information to you next month. I was doing the best I can. I'll do better. So in the middle schools, you see the name of the school, and it's school, we titled that G. That's okay. The next one, quite a bit better. And then school S, if you're following along. You caught me? I moved too fast. I apologize.
No, it's good. School S is 1 out of 18, so I was,
Mhm. And then the last middle school there.
2 out of 27.
Uh-huh. Is that the best we can do as a district? And I think only in the past year did those two come to that school. So I guess it's because there is a change, hopefully in mindset. But what did we do the whole time to finally get to the mindset? And, yes, sir, Mr. Bass. Oh, you Mr. Bass? Yes. Okay.
Could I speak?
Sure.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Browning.
Yes, sir.
And, no, you're good. Leave it there. Wanted to just chime into something Ms. Patterson had talked about. And, we're talking about principals and, being the direct supervisor of principals and sharing some of that responsibility with Dr. Moore. It is his goal in coming to this district, and also my goal too, to make sure that we do the best job that we can do to get a staff that is representative of the students in our school. I have looked at and the equity showcase that Dr. Long put on. One of the most powerful moments in that, to me, was hearing the Vero Beach High School African American Student Council and what they had to say, and then being able to transition to another room and walk with some of those students. And yeah, I mean, it is powerful stuff, wanting to be able to have instructors that are like them. Now, going back to what Ms. Patterson said, that is something we've made abundantly clear to principals this year. And, we started last year, I come in February of 2020. So I had basically 3 weeks with kids in classrooms regularly. Then you having time in HR in a school system, you know what March brings.
Mm-hmm.
March is the recruiting season.
Yes, sir.
And trying our best to go in and find teachers to come in the midst of a pandemic with a focus on, those that are certified or close to being certified or in good certification shape is what I like to refer to it as.
Mm-hmm.
And, it has been a challenge. And, I just ask this, and this is my first time addressing the committee, and I am new, you don't know me, but I would like for us, you're looking at those sheets there, and I took a gander at them today, and yeah, some of the numbers aren't acceptable. You go back in time and you look at windows of time in the school district where you may have gone 5 years and only hired 12 African-American instructors. That's unacceptable. But the charge that we are leading now and the movement that we are going to now, which some of the things Ms. Hofer is going to share with you, they're exciting to me because of the impact it's going to have on our African-American students. So I know we cannot forget history and we cannot let it go. And, I feel for the people in Indian River County who have had to go through this for so many years. It should have been addressed years ago. Agree wholeheartedly with you. But, we got to move forward. We got to work forward. Progress is what we've got to keep doing. And I think some of the things, I know in your conversation last night for 45 minutes or whatever, I think you heard some of those things. And, I am hopeful and optimistic that you heard some progress and see some progress. But, it is that gentleman's, wherever he went, his goal and mission. And, leadership starts from the top down. And, Ms. Patterson, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I think you will find a different outlook, mindset, if you will, moving into the hiring of this year. Our number last year of hiring in the midst of a pandemic with no recruitment fairs basically to speak of. The ones that were there were half attended, virtual. The unknown, what will the school year look like next year? And we hired 13.3%, 16 African-American teachers. I'm not going to steal your thunder, but I may a little bit. Our recruitment fair that we just had, and we're 3 weeks after that, 2 weeks after that, and I think I quoted the other night in the board workshop or board meeting that we were looking at about 8 African-American teachers from that turnaround. I think we're up now to 11, possibly 12. And, we're looking at already what we've hired for next year is over 50%. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I hear you loud and clear. My staff in human capital operations hear you loud and clear. And that's our mission. That's our goal. And again, it's not lip service. It's just, I just felt like I needed to convey that to you and to let you know that, that's from the heart. I mean, that is what we're trying to do.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you you had a question, Dr. Wright?
I wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, no, not directly. I just wanted to put in context, because we don't have an opportunity to get these documents in advance, like, I was just looking over a few things in my car. So what you're saying makes sense, but I'm just getting it. So this is the business of what's been presented that we have to go over. So just that, we don't have an opportunity to talk other than being here. So we probably, more than likely, will get to the other matters where I'm sure you can state as you did, what we now have, and we're aware of that. But I didn't want it to come across as if we were suggesting somehow that what he said wasn't being acknowledged, because I already
No.
saw those documents.
I think it's more of where we are.
Yeah.
And certainly, acknowledging where we are, and that drives the force that lets us know that we need to make these changes, and you're saying that that's the work that's being done.
Yeah. And no, ma'am, I didn't take it that way,
Okay.
And the thing is, I wasn't here prior to February of 2020. I have a hard time of disrespecting people's work that I'm not there to witness and see and be a part of. I can only speak for what we've been doing from here forward. And, again, I just wanted to convey that to you guys.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Beth, just 30 more seconds, please. Okay, so then you have the big sheets,
The high schools?
big 8.5 by 14. And it's just 2 of those. And believe you me, we do want to take a look at, we have an obligation to see what charter schools have too, but that's for another night.
Do we
So
want
you
to
see
put that on the?
School S, you see that? Did you find it?
Would you say charter schools, look at charter schools next time?
Yes, ma'am. If we can get that data. They are public schools and they are covered by this, by this school system.
Yeah, they have been part of the discussion
Yes.
previously.
Yeah, I saw some of the videos and read some of the minutes. So we want to just, make that communication and partnership with them also with this committee. But you see, did you find the long one?
Yeah, I
keep
have it.
saying
I already
doc-
marked it up. I highlighted all of them. I
You
just-
don't have to tell me that I can't read. I'm calling you Dr. Wright as Dr. Bristol. I apologize.
That's okay. I thought you were talking to somebody else. I didn't, you were talking to me. I kept looking like, who's Dr. Wright?
She would never have known, Mr. Rowley.
I didn't know. I was like, well, where's Dr. Wright?
I'm so sorry.
You told on yourself that
I did.
Did you know he was talking to me?
We didn't know who he was talking to.
Oh, okay, so I wasn't alone. Okay.
So sorry. Okay, so we have that first high school, and it's bleak.
One of the 17.
Yeah, it's bleak. And then the next one looks a little bit better. Not much.
Well, just twice as many.
Yeah.
It's a little bit better, yeah. Six out of 37.
Okay, so that is, let me get back over here. That is the information that you've seen now for yourself, that the hiring has been dismal to poor for the last 5 years. And I only pulled 5 years. Didn't dare go beyond that, too much work. And I told you about the guy said we had excellent teachers. But I had a very good discussion on yesterday, and sometimes I want to tell you guys what's happening, but I don't want to break sunshine. I'm too little for jail, so I am not doing that.
And I don't look good in orange. I don't look good in
I
orange,
know,
so.
that's right.
Ms. Hofer,
I got my own outfit.
So
It's
I
yours.
feel like we could just repeat our conversation that we had with them, and then everybody be on the same page.
please, yes.
So, first, I kind of want to let you, are there specific questions that you would like me to answer? Otherwise, I could stand up here and talk for hours about what's been going on in recruiting. So I want to make sure when you leave tonight that you have some specific answers to questions that you may have.
Okay, well, let me kick off some. I think you gave the chart, I believe it had 24 applicants, and we were wondering what the breakup of, or that's what I was wondering, what the breakout of that chart is. And don't go yet, I'll give you what's on my mind right now, and as well as we talked about males, is there a possibility of some males in the pipeline? And what is the process that you're going to use when you look at these schools and the data that shows that there are some not meeting? So do you assign by, okay, you are deficient, or your school number is deficient, and we need to work towards the goal with this school, that school, the other? Just, if you could fill us in by that, and I think did everybody find the chart that was provided? Okay. Yes, I think, yes. Okay, Ms. Hofer.
Sure, so I'm not sure what chart you're looking at, so I'm just going to talk, and then if it matches up to what you're saying. So first, I came on board the end of June, beginning of July. This is my 20th year in the district. I've been a teacher, sub first, teacher, coach at Sebastian River High School with Dr. Jones, my only year when they became an A, just saying. And then opened Storm Grove, and then I became an AP at River Beach High School. And then I came to the district office and worked in professional development for a year. And then I went to Oslo as the principal, where I was there for 5 years. So I just left my Wildcats and came here in July. So I was part of the machine the past few years of hiring as a principal and looking for that diversity in my staff to meet the needs of my students. And, when I got to Oslo, the 5 years that they were there, we increased student enrollment by over 200 students. And that was because we focused on building relationships, and we talked about that yesterday, the importance of doing that. So when I was asked to come here to work on recruiting and retention, and I knew, and I'm going to use this word, but it's just how I feel, it's a mess. It was a mess. The numbers are a mess. It's not anything that we should be proud of, and I felt very strongly about what can we do to fix it. So my goal the first couple of months was that we need to create a program. We need to create a recruiting program that we can build on. There needs to be a campaign. How are we going to recruit African Americans to come here? There's lots of beaches in Florida, okay? So the fact that we're Vero Beach didn't really mean that much to me, although the town is wonderful. It's a wonderful place to work and live. It's a wonderful community. So through lots of collaboration, we came up with We Promise, because our human capital, our people, are what bring people here and what keep people here. You know, when you have a 97, 98 retention rate of almost all categories, which African American retention rate is higher than white, okay? It is because when you come here, you usually end up staying. And you know there's many, many teachers that have been here for 30 years, and some at the same school the whole 30 years. So it was really important to me to take that time. And in the sense of urgency that the first day of work, there was an equity meeting or something in this room. And they were like, can you go over there? And I met some of you and thought, wow. And I hadn't ever looked at the joint plan. So just to tell you, like, okay. So African American Achievement Plan? Yes, because I was as a principal working that. So we built We Promise. And We Promise is we promise to listen, we promise to support, we promise to create a diverse workforce, we promise to build I have a copy for you. You don't have to write it all down, so I brought extra copies for you, but it's on the website and it's in the recruiting plan. We promise to build instructional leaders, and we promise to work stronger together. So that was the framework. And as we built that program, we included other departments, because building instructional leaders is not just me. We have a whole curriculum instruction and a whole educator quality department that has leadership academies, teachers that want to become APs, APs that want to become principals, new principals. They have their own meetings to make sure as a new principal they are learning the things that they need to learn. I had the opportunity to work with Dr. Lord to present at the new principal meeting, because I knew everybody, so that was really awesome. So We Promise is the first thing. The other thing is, we have great people here. And Mr. Ryan and I talked yesterday about when he was in HR, how he used to take opportunities to talk to parents and say, you know, when your kids graduate and they get a college degree, they can come back here and teach. We'll help them get through certification. Well, my experience, we always want to hire the most qualified person, but we also want to have equity. So one of the things of We Promise and what we're doing this year is we had to build systems, not just me, curriculum instruction, the new teacher program, educator quality, academics, everything, so that if we have a candidate that has a bachelor's degree, even if it is not in a certifiable area, we have to tell them the pathway that they have, what the work they have to do. We'll hire you, but here's the work that you have to do. There's a lot of grads that I've met from Florida Memorial, FAMU, other HBCUs that have criminal justice, I'm just letting you know, and organizational management. They are not bachelor's degrees that translate to certification. So they have to take a subject area test. So we have a few, which I've been saying in the hopper, that is the path they're gonna have to take. So this whole entire year, and I've been on many recruiting trips in my past as an administrator, where we've gone to the school, none of that exists this year. Everything is virtual. So you don't get I'm live and you can experience me and I can try to sell you on why you should come. It's on camera. Okay, so we have a recruiting team of which 65% of the members are African American. They include teachers, they include administrators, they include district staff. And so of the HBCU and other career fairs that we participated in this year, somebody from the recruiting team has come and sat next to me with the laptop or had it up on the screen. Ataba was on the recruiting team before she became part of this. She's done several fairs with me. And then if we like the candidate, because you only get 10 minutes, that's kind of the setup. It's through handshake. The candidates sign up to talk to you, okay? So you're hoping that there's some candidates. You can go in and look and search resumes and send them messages, which I've sent many, many. Handshake is, if you've not heard, I use it, and they're like, what's Handshake? But Handshake is basically a recruiting software website. Google uses it. They spend over $200,000 a year on Handshake to recruit for them. We have the base plan because I didn't know what it was when I got here. So we just have the base plan. I can see everything. I can sign up for any recruiting fairs through Handshake. The average cost of a recruiting fair this year is $75 to $400, which if you've gone on one recruiting trip and you sent 2 people and it was a plane ticket and the car and the hotel, I mean, the cost differential is insane doing it virtually. So the great part is that we have met a lot of candidates, and we also work with Diversity in Education. We have a contract with them. So Diversity in Education is national, and they post all of our job openings on their website and ad in their magazine. So we did their fair in September, and the software that they used was amazing. And I thought, oh my gosh, how cool. It's like a virtual, it's just like a virtual room, and they have little people walking around. It's really cool. So I called Trina Edwards, and I was like, I'm trying to set up our fair. I don't know, I can't use Handshake because we don't have the premium. I want to know how, I really liked your fair. So Diversity in Education actually started a contract with V Fairs, which is the company. So we did our career fair through Diversity in Ed. They advertised for us. We advertised. I advertised on Handshake. I sent emails out to actual career services people at different HBUs in the state to make sure we were getting people. So that happened April 8th. And we had a big discussion about maximizing and taking advantage of the moment. Because if you've been on a recruiting trip, we are a small district when you stand next to Duval County, Hillsborough County, and they have a benefits person, all right there, and a contract. And you're like, here, have a pen. I mean, that's just I know that's terrible, but that's how I felt. So, and I'm just being real. So what we decided to do with, a lot of discussion with Mr. Bass is if we found a candidate that we thought would make a good fit, that we would check their references, but we would have principals talk to them. And from that one day, April 8th, we had 151 participants register for our career fair only. We have 20 candidates, 11 of which are African American, that are they're in the process of being hired. They're either totally done, or I've checked their references, but I want one more principal to talk to them, because one of the things that's been said, and I told him, I've never been able to talk, so watch out. One of the things I've heard is, they do not, and I have before I came, there was a recruiting focus group that was created, and I took it over. So there are some community members, African-American community members, and anyone's welcome, it's a public meeting. And one of the things that they said was that they, because of the past, that they want the district office to have an interview committee and to interview everybody, and that the principals shouldn't be allowed. Well, that goes against the culture of the school, building relationships. So part of what our discussion yesterday was, and it's part of the plan as well, is that all of the principals and APs, I included them, I built a class on Canvas for culturally responsive interviewing. I took a course through the National Association of School Psychologists for culturally responsive interviewing, got my certificate, took my test, created the course, and all of the principals, HR included, the director, all of the directors in HR have access to this class, and they have to finish it, and then I sent them a little certificate. So we have going to the interviewing thing, because I know that was a big part. There's a standardized interviewing process. There's standardized HR forms for interviewing. There's standardized questions, and there have been standardized questions from the district for many years, but what we did this year is, after this course, we have standardized questions from the district, and then a bank of culturally responsive questions. So I made like 3 different versions, so they didn't have to do it, and they're posted in Word. They have to answer 3 district, 3 culturally responsive, and they can add other questions if they want to. So for the fair, it was like, I felt like I was in a movie, like a football recruiting day, you know, we had the whole board up. So when Ataba was referencing the percentages, and this was something that I talked to Mr. Browning about yesterday, for me, in going through all the documents and responding to all the recommendations and all the joint plan sections and all of that, I've written a response to every single one of those several times about what we're doing. I want every school to match their percentage or higher, because that's okay too, that's great, but at least move in a direction where we're matching the percentage of instructional staff to the percentage of African-American students. So when we had the fair, there was a wall of whiteboard. I had every school, elementary, middle, high, and the specialty schools, Wabasso, ACE, early learning, the pre-K schools, what their percentage of their staff was, and right next to it, what their percentage of students was and how many openings they had that day. Because they're not done. We're still, you know, there's some people retiring, coming in, principals might move this person to this, you know, they might move for this person to this grade level or this different subject area, or somebody's going to become a coach and now it's opened up another position. So it's in a constant state of change. But that day, we had 50 openings, and we have 20 viable candidates from that day. I have 3 more that are not from the fair just this week, just from talking. So speaking about males, because we talked about that, and I would love if he was watching, because I talked to his mom on Monday, but from FAMU, we hired 1 female African-American. She's actually Miss Education 2021 for FAMU, okay? And I talked to her today. She is graduating on Saturday and wants to come. She's already hired. She's going to Rosewood. So those of you that are looking at the numbers, you're like, oh, Rosewood needs some people. So Rosewood has not only hired her, I'm not going to mention names, but another candidate from the job fair who's African-American that's moving here from New York. So they're not in the system yet because they have to come, fingerprint, background, all that. But they have been offered the job and have accepted to come here. So there's 2 going Rosewood, because I know that was big. So I want everyone to know that every person that's hired from this day forward, we are looking at those numbers. I call it the gap, because in principal word, the achievement gap, it's a recruiting gap, it's an instructional gap. So principals cannot hire someone rogue. They have to go through us, and we are looking at the numbers for every single hire. So one other thing that we talked about when you were talking about talking to the parents, all year we've been working with Indian River State College because we want to have our own system, I'm very system-oriented, where our students that may be interested in teaching, or maybe they're not, but we might be able to convince them they're interested in teaching, starting in middle school. There's some pathway that by the time they graduate, they will have dual enrollment in high school, both high schools. They would have an Associates of Arts degree in education, which means part of their dual enrollment pathway would include 2, and they could do more if they wanted, but they have to take 2 intro to teaching classes, okay? So we've been working with Dr. Amatucci at IRSC and Katie Knoll all year. It's already cemented, and I have gone with April Perez, she's someone in CNI, and presented at Vero Beach High School to students that are interested in dual enrollment. So we went with the flyer. So we call this academy Teach IR, Indian River, but Teacher Academy. It is all ready to go for August. The clubs that are being implemented into the schools, the high schools have them, especially Vero Beach High School, FFEA, Florida Future Educators of America. We have asked and charged all of the middle school principals to also have an FFEA chapter, so we can start in 6th grade. The focus is on trying to capture minority students, but anyone is welcome. And they will do things at the middle school level, like, you know, they'll have a club after school, they will have presentations. IRSC is chomping at the bit already. When can we come and present at the clubs? So this is a pipeline. When those students from Vero Beach High School and Sebastian High School graduate with this AA in education, they will walk the stage, they will get their high school diploma, they will get an AA in education and a contract to come back and work in Indian River County. So that's not enough. So I said, we need a scholarship now, because they're gonna go through all this work, this dual enrollment, which dual enrollment's free, and, you know, they pay for the books and everything, but now they gotta go to college. Of course, they can go to IRC, but you still have to pay for that. So I've worked with finance, and thank you, Ron Fagan, and all of your people in finance, that starting in August, just like we do right now, I don't know if you're aware, but for United Way, at the beginning of the year, they go around to all the schools, and every single employee in the whole district gets a pledge sheet. You can do 50 cents, you can do $1, whatever you want, every paycheck. That same system is gonna go into place for an FFEA scholarship. So even if, you know, let's say all 2,000 employees donate $1 every paycheck, imagine how much money we could give out in scholarships at the end of the year. So your child, anybody listening, that's in high school or going into high school, they would start with a student success class, which a lot of the dual enrollment kids do. It's mandatory. They're offering it at Vero Beach High School. So now, oh, I can't go to do dual enrollment because I can't leave campus. I don't have a car. I can't drive. Well, you can start right at Vero Beach High School being taught by a Vero Beach High School student, a teacher. So it is, that's what we're building. And we're just, and the frustration that I've felt, you know, I have these meetings every month with this recruiting group, and they're, you know, asking me questions and showing me data. And I said, please give us the time to create a strong foundation for recruiting. And I promise you, I mean, Monday, I think it was Monday, this one male student, a FAMU grad that I'm desperately trying to get, I emailed him. He is interviewed, literally interviewed, formal interview with like 7 of our elementary schools. They all emailed me and said, we want him. I'm like, well, you're fighting now over this one guy. I found out today, happens to be Mr. Education from FAMU. So I didn't know that. I was talking to Mrs., and I said, I'm trying to get somebody else from FAMU. And she's like, I won't say his name, but him. And I'm like, yes. She's like, I'm already talking to him. So I'm like, we need Mr. and Mrs. both here. Well, he has a housing issue. Okay, so he emailed me because he's smart. I love him already because he's like, he will not apply yet through our system because he's weighing his options. He's from Jacksonville, okay? It's Duval County. So he emailed me and said, this is my budget. I need somewhere to live. So I have a Facebook page, Recruit SDIRC, and I blasted out the last week to our realtors, hey, you guys need to, let's go. We need places for people to live. So one of the realtors, who happens to be a former teacher, and she's been doing realty for about 5 years, I messaged her and said, this is his budget, I need you to find me a place. So, you know, just, you know, positive energy. Her boss, which I'm gonna give the shout out, so hopefully it works out, to Rennick Realty. Somebody owns an apartment building, and there happens to be an availability coming up that is a little bit more than his budget, but it is utilities, Wi-Fi included and furnished. You can't find that here. So, last thing, and then if you have any questions, I told you I could talk a long time. Last night was the second Workforce Housing Committee meeting, and this is a committee that the board asked us to have, and we have a mixture of people. And last night we said, you know, we want to do some long-term things. We want community that has land to get together. We had looked at the whole country, and they brought back information from different states about teacher buildings, teacher towns, you know, that you can come here and it's a reduced rate, but you can live here for only 3 years, so you get some money saved up to buy a house. So last night I said, can we just stop focusing right now on that and focus on rentals? Because that is such a boom with the housing, we really need to focus on finding people a place to live. So we decided last night to start a campaign, and one of them is a realtor on the group. So she's gonna go through and get a list of all the apartment complexes, and I'm gonna start knocking on doors and going, hi, I'm Ms. Hofer. Because what would help is not only reduced rental rate, but possibly because we background check, because we do fingerprinting, because they have an employment contract for a year. Who's not, you know, that's what the guy said, why wouldn't I want to rent to a teacher? So anybody listening, that's what we need, is for our community, to do this for our community, we need everybody on board. Everybody needs to be a recruiter. So I'm excited about our career fair and that we were that successful, and I'm constantly checking references, and that's why if you look, there's 3 that are absolutely done. Of the 11, there's 8 more that we're processing at some point, but I'm in HR, but I am a Department of Recruiting of 1, with help. But so we are going through and we are using these percentages for every decision that we make. So is there any other questions I can answer for you?
Being comfortable, if you find a female, she might be more comfortable talking to a female, or a guy might be more comfortable talking to a guy, as far as realtors or
Right.
whatever. And you said you had a diverse group,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to do too many shout outs, but I have
Yeah,
a
so she got-
male realtor on my focus group and a female realtor, and there's a candidate that is coming over, definitely, from the other side of the state, and her and her boyfriend want to buy. So I asked her, I really just asked her, like, I have these 2. So she picked which realtor she wanted, which was the male, and they have been talking for the past week about, where does she want to live, and blah, 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 blah. So we're keeping all of that in mind, because it is really important. If you can build a relationship at the beginning, and it's solid, then you're on the positive path. So I think one other thing that you asked me about yesterday was, if we find somebody, are we placing people? Okay, we are not placing people at a school. Today, I had a conversation with Gifford, okay, because they're looking for a school counselor. I forwarded an application to someone that I've already given a contract to. Okay, so he's coming, and it's a he. But I think it would be a good fit. So I want to afford the principal the opportunity to interview him, to speak to him, to meet him. And then I said, you do that, you get back to me, give me feedback, and then we'll discuss next steps. So we are going to make sure that he's placed somewhere that there's a need. And we talked about the middle schools specifically, because the current data, Sebastian River Middle and Oslo, their teacher percentage is higher than their student percentage. Storm Grove, what I call the recruiting gap, is only 3%. There's 8% of the teachers and 11% African-American students. Gifford, it's about 15%, but there's 35% African-American students at Gifford and 20% staff. So it might look like the numbers are way higher of staff, but you have to look, if we're talking about equity, you have to look at the percentage of the students. And, I'm not just, we're looking at African-Americans for this purpose, but we're also looking at Hispanic, because that is also a concern, of who needs what. But that's not totally where all my energy's going, but if it comes up, then we find a good fit.
I did kind of the same thing, and there were, when I looked at, I told you I looked at every area, and at one time, our one Hispanic school had no Hispanics in the cafeteria. And I addressed the board and said, how could you not? When you have, and sorry to go off tangent a bit, but so you can see, if you have a kid that comes and says, yo tengo headaches when I eat beans or whatever, or you have to have somebody who can relate to that child. So yes, and we do need a diverse group. Now, one question, and I asked you about your signing ability to give them contracts, and I think you said you have that. Then I said, what if there are openings? You have openings, 25 or whatever, and the principals want to do their own thing, but you have some people to place. Do you have that ability? Now, before you answer that, I did have a couple of times where I would send some of the teachers around, and they'd talk to this principal, and all of a sudden it was, they don't want me. They knew they didn't want me, but then they went over here and they felt extremely comfortable. So you do have to kind of follow that, in my opinion. I mean, I like the plan that I'm hearing, but yeah, and you're on the right path, I think. And you were going to answer about the contracts, maybe, Mr. Bass?
Well, I just want to chime in on the placement. And, this is and I refer to Ms. Hofer, and I think she does a good job of it, it's kind of almost like a matchmaker. because we see what that school's needs are in the line of a teacher. And she finds somebody, and, she's constantly, even before the job fair, hey, I found somebody, check them out and so forth. But if we get to the point where, kind of what you're talking about, I've communicated to the principals, hey, guys, I'm going to talk to you. I am not big on saying, yes, you shall be right here. In my 20 years of being an administrator, that is not my practice. I've done it twice, and both times the principal said, you never do this. Why did you do this? One of the two times it backfired. So I've learned my lesson. But, playing the matchmaker and seeing and knowing the relationship that they could potentially have, that's huge in it. I mean, this is not just a numbers thing. This is not just a certification thing. It's a person thing. Where do we think they would be best at? Where do we think they could get along? Where do we think they could be successful? Where do we think that there's other staff members around that could help them out or they could help them out? Hearing her talk about the teachers right out of college, I mean, think about it. I've got a couple of sons that are, 20 and 24. If mama's involved, it's not always a bad thing to know that, I'm going to send my child off somewhere, they're still their child, and they're going to get the support that we're already showing them. It's about the relationship, and getting them here and getting them in the right place. As far as the principals also, I've been having those conversations with them for months now. So it is not something that they're not expecting. They know what my desire is, and they know what they're looking for. And, I think by being so upfront and making it such a priority, it is, and I think you even said it, it has changed. Again, here I am back again. I'm not repeating myself, but I'm getting there again. It's changed the mindset. So, Mr. Browning, can I say right now that we won't place somebody somewhere? I can't say that. But if we do, just know that it was, it was something that maybe that we said, hey, we need to try this. And if it doesn't work, then let's take a step back and, we'll find something that does work. So just wanted to input that.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to ask if there's a way that what you shared, which is so potent, if it's documented, because I'm trying to take notes on it, but ultimately, if you can put it in some prospectus draft form or something that we can have.
Which, all of it?
Yeah, you outlined a lot, which is robust, and it would help for us to be able to have a metric, to be able to say, she said she was gonna do this, she's done that, she's doing this, and that this aligns with the recommendations, and this aligns with all the other things that we're talking about, so that we can go back to.
Like a nice one-pager.
If you can, I don't mind 2 or 3, but not more than.
Sure, the
Yeah.
recruiting plan that is on the district website has a lot of information about the programs that I talked about, the FFEA clubs, the scholarship, We Promise. It also has a list of the career fairs, and I go in and update it, so when I update it, I have to do the revised date and then send it, and they've changed it online. But it shows all of the career fairs that have been attended, who attended them with us.
So if it surmises what you just said in jest, I would appreciate it, and we can insert it into the body of the
Absolutely.
work that we have,
Yeah, like
because that would be complementary to what we can discuss.
Absolutely. And it changes all the time, but it'd be
course, yeah.
awesome, for every, and I'm just saying, I will do it for you because it's important. Every 2 weeks, I'm always updating it. So, how many have we hired, how many are African-American, that kind of information. I mean, I sent Mr. Browning like a spreadsheet of the 20, what their name is, where they're going, what stage they're in of the hiring process. Have they been, we checked references, they applied online, we've interviewed them, have they accepted, all of that. So he has that. And then I also I haven't sent it to you, but I've been presenting just to different groups. So I have like a little PowerPoint that's like a summary of the different programs, and it has some data in there. So I can just update that and send it to you.
That would be I mean, what does everyone?
Yeah, the
think?
data
The
is
data's
definitely
important
welcome.
Because we need to be able to attest to what you're speaking to right now
Mhm.
in the body of a document, so that, you know, whatever additional hearings, because this is a court case in
Sure,
part.
yeah.
and
Yes.
we-
Did
we
they
won't be
have
able
what
to-
I sent you?
I
The-
think she
the
sent it to
spreadsheet?
everybody. Yeah, when you sent that spreadsheet, she sent it out to everybody, I believe.
I was talking more about the
Did you?
programs, because the
Absolutely.
programs
Okay.
really let us know, it explains the data,
Yes.
you know.
And
That's
I also, when Mr. Bass mentioned those contracts, I asked for them, so you have a copy of them.
Yes, I do.
want- You know, they keep attributing, believe and verify, but verify to Ronald Reagan. Maybe he said it, I don't know, but trust but verify. So,
You
want to
have
see those
them,
contracts, see
right.
those
You
numbers.
have them?
Yes.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
like I
And
said,
I have them.
okay. But I brought a copy of the recruiting plan, it's 9 pages, so it's past your 3. But in here, it explains all the programs, so I can shorten it down and, you know, take some stuff out, so just capture what we discussed tonight, so that it's easy to read, and it's like a little summary of everything.
Just a summary.
You got it, absolutely.
And if the summary explains what you've outlined here, then it'll be useful for our discussion.
Right, like some strategies that we're using that have been asked to be implemented, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else I can answer?
Very nice. Oh, and I think the other thing I talked about was when I, around this time, around May, right, Deborah? I think we would have a baccalaureate, used to be before COVID. And we'd always say, I'd stand up and say, if you have a child graduating as a teacher, they have a job here in Indian River County. And we got a lot of locals coming back because parents want their kids close. So if we can make those contacts with those parents and or some kind of way through Pastors Association, or Deborah might have some contacts, and we just need to make sure that that happens so they know that this is home and people start to feel more welcome. And that's, thank you very much. Anybody else have any?
I'll be on stage at the Vero graduation because my daughter's graduating and I want to hand her her diploma. So maybe I'll just cut in on Mr. O'Keefe for a
If you
minute.
could, please.
and talk to the audience, so take that opportunity. So you
Would be
heard me,
great.
Mr. O'Keefe, that's happening. So
Thank you
you're
so
welcome.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, under, I don't know, I guess I didn't put, did I put it A? I said requested information, there was some information, one that we're gonna have to look at the next time. It's so tiny, oh my Lord, that I looked at how, I asked the question about a month ago, I think, how many African-American teachers had applied to the district, because it would be excellent if it was 20 and 20. But if it was 150 and 20, it might not be so excellent. So trust but verify, I want to see those numbers. And we have a chart. Dr. Bristol, I don't think you're going to be able to see that. You see how tiny that is?
You know I can't see this.
I have to zoom it up way up on my computer. I don't know if there's a way that IT can get it to us any. It was the IT that does it, whoever provided that. I think it's from the Applet Track system, whatever. So it's a little bit bigger so we can see that. And I figured we'd be going a long
Yeah, I mean, the
time.
margins here are huge for just numbers that
Yeah.
are, you know, not even double digit. Like, it doesn't have to take up the whole page, so that
Yeah, they
would
can
have.
abbreviate some of the
Yeah,
titles,
and
the column
abbreviate some of
titles.
the titles. And multiple pages on this is not bad, because there's actually a header, there are page numbers. I mean, the headers on each page, so the formatting will at least allow us to be clear about what we're examining, so.
Okay.
But the print on this is just, you know, it's microscopic.
Mr. Bass, is that your, the number of teachers who've applied, does that come through your office?
It does fall in my office.
Okay, yes, sir. It's
you're
so
just-
tiny.
You're just a little bit almost above my technology ability there. But I think that's what Ms. Hofer was talking to Mr. McDonald about and Mr. Smeltzer.
All
So
right.
we will try to enlarge that to some extent.
Yes,
So
sir.
it is a little more readable,
Thank you very much.
and we will see what we can do. And then, you know,
Thank you. If this committee agrees, we'd like to take a look at that on the next time. That's something that I think personally is important. So we've got to, okay, the discussion joint monthly progress monitoring. And we can also, if you'd like to take a look at this the next time, but I did want to point out some things tonight. Now that is the document that Dr. Moore provided for us, and the one that I numbered with the red letters. Just looking at some of that, and that's, I think, some of the conversation and the question that Dr. Bristol, you've been saying, and we, this says, number one, April 21, 17% African-American representation of applicants for instructional position by race. So it tells me numbers, but there's, with that chart or with an Excel, I can see how many applicants by race, instead of just going off of it with 17, because, I don't know, this old preacher used to say you can make your mouth say anything, and I want the real information. Apologize to put it that way. Representation of interviewers by race, and we can look at these next time. I apologize for getting them to you so late. And then I wrote something down here. New hires by race were 13%. And,
I just had that, now I can't find it.
I'm sorry.
I'm talking to myself, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I'm looking at number, new hires by race, number 4. It's keeps saying January 2021, 13%, 13%, 13. Is the turnover rate, does anybody know, is that about 10%? We have 1,000 teachers, so we lose hire about 100 per year? Or has that 1,000 teacher number changed?
The number varies from year to year. I typically, I think 10 would be 10% would be the standard, but it depends on enrollment, decline, shifts in programming, but typically 10.
Okay, yes, sir, thank you. And so, yeah, 13% new hires, then representation of certified instructors. So if you take a look at that committee, at that page, any information will be ready to ask for that clarifies that for the next session. And if I could look at number 6 and tell you my example there, it says retention rates for new African-American teachers participating in the SDIRC new teacher mentoring program. Just some explanation on that for next time. Are we talking about 10 new teachers? Which teachers are these? Just the new hires since August? Just, it has the retention rate percentage, but we don't know what that, it's just a vague number to me. And it's, to grade on that and to say, that we're making progress would be kind of difficult with that just a number. We retained 97%. What does that mean? And I'm not a full statistician, but I'm just, a statistician enough to ask a couple questions.
So you want to we should have the numbers next to it, maybe in parentheses?
Yeah, I mean, what does that column mean? I mean, it's given to us. What does it mean? What do all of these mean? And then we got number 7, retention of instructors by race. So, just so that people know, we'll be asking for that. Then on the next page, if you jump to the percentage of students within each racial subgroup or one or more school suspensions, 3%, so we'll be asking you probably have some questions about that. One or more out-of-school suspension, and looks like African-American, 1%, white, non-Hispanic, 0.3%. So one of my questions would be now, would that be overall? Is that high school? Is that elementary, middle, and high? Is that taken, Dr. Bristol?
Well, the data in general needs to be disaggregated, right? Like, it needs to be broken out so that we understand what the superintendent or what each division is wanting to communicate to us. And even if there's a short summary underneath, 2, 3, not more than 5 sentences that explains how the numbers have been compiled, that helps us to not have to spend, so much time trying to figure it out. The whole point of using numbers is to be able to be clear about what the status is rather than trying to interpret it. Like, you're presenting numbers because you've interpreted for us what it is that you've done or what you're doing.
Yes.
And this is just it's too broad, it's too blanket. It doesn't mean that it's not done and that it's not relevant, but it means that because we're not privy to your process and how you're compiling it, it's left up to interpretation. And we have to speak to these documents, we have to be able to account whether or not it's compliant and make recommendations on it. And as it stands now, it's just too broad. It's in aggregate form, which doesn't explain to us individually, especially since this is the only format in which we can talk.
So I absolutely heard, and that was some of the information that we wanted to cover in those initial meetings. Unfortunately, I didn't get to have that meeting with each member, but that was the opportunity to say, this is a lot of information. This is how it's being interpreted. As I sit back and listen, I'm already seeing some tweaks that I can make, understanding that some of the members are in fact new. So we can make those tweaks and push that information out. Numerators, denominators, that's all fine. Trying to keep it from being 1,000 pages. And one of the issues that I struggle with and what we're moving to is a live dashboard on our webpage, public facing for the entire world to see, which allows individuals to see that percent and then drill down by school in order to see. So taking Power BI, it was being mentioned, and make it public facing for the community to say, I have questions, let me slice and dice the data, because once you put a number on a piece of paper and you print it and send it, it's old.
Right.
It's stagnant. And that's not how I look at data, that's not how any current educator looks at it. It has to be, you have to be able to manipulate it, and it has to help you interpret, think, and evaluate. So as I listen to those things, we can provide that explanation if it's the will of the board. I can go through some of these documents, make recommendations as I hear them, or present them, and shift it or modify it to the will of this current board.
Yes, sir, thank you. And so I think what you're asking for, Dr. Bristol, is like a summary for each of those little areas, so we understand
I can see
it.
that there's an effort made to separate them out by color, but I'm reading through it now. So blue is representation, so the orange rust color is percentages, the green color is the iReady. Clearly, you're breaking that out, but it might be better served, although I love the fact that it's concise, don't get me wrong, but this would be one document that we could expound on a little more. So if even 1 page or 2 pages would help to make it more clear, then that's useful. The only time too many pages is unuseful is when it's not saying anything.
Right, well, I think that has been a challenge, actually, because we were getting so much information, and I think we even asked to have it more concise and broken down. So I think that we just need to fine tune and probably make sure we're asking the right questions that so they know, we know what data to be pulled and presented.
What I wanted to make certain, as I said to Ms. Hoffer, is that what you say here tonight makes sense. When I go home tonight, but tomorrow when I'm looking over these documents, I need to be able to still make sense of it and not try to just reinterpret or recall what you said, and I thought you meant this, but the document doesn't stipulate as much, because we then have to turn it, we have to speak to, or the NAACP is going to be looking at it, you've got a judge that's going to be looking at it, and we just want to make sure that I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So it's not nitpicking, but it's just to be certain, if we understand it, if I understand it, then I'd like to believe that anyone looking at it would otherwise be able to read it and interpret it.
And I 100% agree, and one of I think I mentioned it, Mr. Browning, one of our recommendations is really identifying, I know I said it to Ms. Walker, opportunities for you actually to go and see the work live. And I know you all have jobs and you're employed, but I think there are a number of, let me go and see it. So some of the things that we do are in fact in the public, the majority are inside classrooms. So putting those together, but as you kind of discussed here, capturing that information, whether it be through a research brief or just a very specific brief, gives you a better explanation in terms of what the work is doing. Quite honestly, as the plan is written, the documentation and evidence becomes stale. And even though we provide a summary that says, hey, here's what you're about to look at, it still is just things on paper versus seeing it live. And we've added summaries and descriptions, but I think having the opportunities to say, given your schedules, I mean, the people that work for the district, obviously I can give them the time, but I don't know, the folks that don't work for the district, go and see these things, report back, and, good, bad, or indifferent, that creates the kind of dialogue I really think you all want to have.
Well, to be fair, your document does clearly indicate that this is for April, and/or the other ones that we looked at previously outline the time frame. And we know that the numbers certainly are not static. But again, the accountability to be able to attest to what we observed relative to what you have put on paper, relative to what we will convey when we meet with other parties is where we want consistency and continuity. And we understand that there will be shifts, but, plus or minus, there shouldn't be, huge percentages of change
Yes,
and deference. Yeah.
thank you. And look at number 11. We've got, that's the racial representation in the alternative disciplinary school, the Alternative Center for Education. We've got, looks like, the percentages of African Americans in there in January 21 were 51%, February 69%, March 77%, and April 67%. So does that say in March that 77% of the students in the alternative center were African American?
Yes, sir.
I think
That's
the
problematic.
question that we may want to ask also is who's being referred? Because that's another indicator, because a decision is made based on who's referred.
Who's sending the referrals?
Who
Oh,
is-
certainly, I'd like to know
Yeah, I
that.
like that too.
Definitely, yes.
This is
And-
disproportionate.
Because I can,
Yeah.
it's an
To say the
understatement.
least. Yeah, to say the least. To
I
say the
can
least.
remember, true story, where I met this kid and father came in, and the administrator sent the kid over to the alternative school from the high school. It was at Vero Beach High School. I was in HR, and when he told me the story, I didn't believe him, because apparently he was a basketball player and hugged a cheerleader. They gave a hug, and he allegedly grabbed her butt at the library, not the Vero Beach High School library, the Indian River County main library. And when I went over and the administrator verified that that was true, I said, you can't suspend him out of school for something that didn't happen in school or send him to the alternative school. And I came back, and I believe it was Dr. Pritchett, and told him what happened. And he said, you go back and tell her, put them back in school. It was that kind of stuff, and that's just one story. And if you needed the names, they're right up here. So it's those types of things that we hope are not happening, but you never know. So, and here's our conundrum where, it's like we have certain questions, but then we have to come up with them here. And like to just, you just get them all, study what you want, because I think this we should be.
This we definitely need to come back to, because if African Americans make up what percentage in this district?
About 17%.
It's 17%, but 67% of the students in this specific alternative disciplinary school are African American. That's one of the reasons why we are where we are right now. Like, this has to be redressed. This is case in point.
And I just want to say, I've been a principal and an assistant principal, and I have disciplined some kids, suspended, put them out of school, and I don't tolerate school disruption. But think back to the story that I told you a few minutes ago, and there are more where stuff was done disproportionately just because somebody didn't like one. Let me give you another Vero Beach High School while I'm here, since this one popped in my, this is a real one too. So this guy, he said, I run into this kid out at the alternative school, and I said, because I was visiting schools, what are you doing out here? I got into a fight, and they sent me to the alternative school, but the white kid I was fighting, they didn't send him. I didn't believe him. Like, people make up stories. I go back, I'm the equity coordinator, HR, executive director of HR, go to the high school, let me see that file. When I read the file, the boys come into the high school, this is the teacher's statement. The black boy comes in, sits down, the white boy comes in, says something to him, slaps him, they jump up and start fighting. The administrator sent the black kid to the high school. The teacher's own word said that he did not start the fight. So then I had to, of course, tell that to the superintendent, and it had to be corrected. Hopefully that's way in the past, 20 years ago, whatever it was. But there are those things, and it kind of makes you think as to why 77 or 67% of the students in the alternative, how did that happen? So, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I may share a similar anecdote, excuse me. There was a principal who called me once and was explaining to me that there were students who were in the classroom and they had put some, like, metal in the socket, and it kind of had a few flames. And so the teacher obviously sent the students to the office, and so before the students could get to the office, the teacher called and said, I know that they did something wrong, but they're really good kids, please go easy on them. And so the principal said to me, I immediately thought, these two honors white boys, someone's calling to advocate for them, but I know that no one ever calls to advocate for the African-American students. And so he had like an epiphany that a lot of times white students are given the benefit of the doubt in instances, and that may be where some of the disparities come in, so.
Yeah, I think when we dig down into the information, hopefully it's not so. I'd hate to see that. And while I'm, let's look at this
Well, plain
green.
and simple, there should be a criteria for these referrals. And where equity comes in is making certain that, if referrals have to be made, that they're being done consistently with who's being sent out, given, what's at stake here. Because, they're telling us that these are the numbers, so they're not hiding it. So clearly this is something that is
Yes.
a subject for redress, like, definitely.
So in our next session, I think, is it possible that we might have the solution, the plan?
If it's the will of the committee, a presentation on what we're doing within alternative ed, what the reality is in terms of students that are currently there, what led to that number, and the action steps that we plan to take going into next school year to do a couple things. A, to ensure students never get to alternative ed, and B, ensure when they have that behavior modification, that intervention, when they return to the traditional environment, they never come back. So I would like to give that presentation both in terms of the unacceptable outcome in terms of where we're currently at,
Yes.
and the proactive steps that we're taking to ensure that those numbers are more aligned to our demographics.
Thank you, sir. And I think also, like you asked for, where are the referrals coming from? That would help to pinpoint where, I don't know, what needs to be tightened up. Is it a fight on the, what do they call that thing at the high school, the patio, the whatever, I forgot what it's called. Courtyard, that's what it's called, thank you. Where did the problems
That
occur?
can definitely happen, because again, in Power BI, in your disciplinary, in that particular part, you can see where who made the referral.
Yep.
Who wrote the ODR, the outcome of the ODR, where it happened. So it's very possible to get all of that information.
Okay. So, yes, so that one will definitely, I think we agree that we'll need some stuff on that, and if you could shoot your questions, I think, and so we were talking about this process, Dr. Bristol, shooting perhaps questions to Mrs. Davis, so Dr. Moore knows what he can be well prepared on what we might be asking.
This is why we needed old business.
Lots of old business.
Certainly. Wow, okay, now let's see, okay, the next one is discussion on chief diversity qualifications. And I'm gonna go off a tangent here before I forget. I hate to get home and say something, but I know some of the board members are probably watching. I think I saw Dr. Schiff, but I definitely want to give a heartfelt thank you to Dr. Jones for being here, for caring about the work, for making a physical presentation here. And I say that with a history and a background of knowing and working for her and with her and sending her recruits and teachers, and they were hired and discipline was down, and she still had an A school. So it can be done. Thank you for the support, Dr. Jones. I think we all got the job description of this chief diversity. Does anybody have anything to say before I just sort of kind of take over? I don't know. No? Okay. I was sending out so many documents late. I apologize. Darn, do I have enough? I'll get you one, Mrs. Davis. I jotted down some notes that I'm going to give to them. Oh, I do have one for you.
Thank you.
In addition to, back on the mic. If this goes forward, which I think is needed, in addition to the job description that you've had, while you're taking a look at it, this is an email that Dr. Moore and I talked about, and I sent him and my concerns about the position. And I just said, so here are just my feelings of how it, and he, of course, he's the boss, he can do it the way he wants, but I'd like to have all the applicants, when they come forth, screened out in a spreadsheet. Maybe can hide the names and just go by the qualifications. So name, degree, years experience with this type of area, title, responsibilities, what have they done? Are you now the equity guru of St. Lucie County or whatever county you're in? Community work, and questions geared toward looking at their knowledge of federal equity laws, because as people, some don't know, they think that equity means giving black people free stuff. It's not. Equity is for all students. It's for people. It's ADA. It's disability. It is Title VII, employment. Title VI, student access to education. Title IX, equity in sports. So the boys don't have a batting machine and the girls can never use the batting machine. Or the boys are riding in an air-conditioned bus and the girls on the yellow bus, and the boys are going to the steakhouse and the girls drive through McDonald's. So it's equity all around. And so do they understand those laws? DSEG experience, compliance is what I think. You should at least know something about it, have some experience with it, a sense of community. Do you understand the community? Understanding or tied to underprivileged black communities. This one in particular, we used to look at districts that were like our districts. And in most places you go, you got a rich side of the tracks and you got a poor side of the tracks. Can you relate? So this is the feelings that I feel. Hiring experience. If you have never hired anybody, how are you going to tell if there's a disparity in hiring? Work experience is something with maybe Urban League or NAACP. Do you understand that? Establish community rapport. Training possibilities and results. Are you able to relate your knowledge to others? Can you show, do you have the ability to show other people what you feel the issues are in equity? and what is your vision to do other things. So anyway, you have the rest of that email, and Dr. Moore talked about, we'd kind of get a feel from the group on what you felt like was important when this position comes, if it comes to fruition. So any comment, any discussion?
It's deep. It's deep, and I mean, I agree with the majority of the recommendations that you have here. I totally understand when you're speaking about experience in HR and the hiring processes and just knowledge in those laws. It's a very important position. It's needed. We can tell from the pushback from the community that it's needed. So just outside of that, I agree. with the
Yes,
majority of
thank
the
you.
recommendations.
And we also, I talked to Dr. Moore about, you want a person who can relate to, you got two parties here. If the district doesn't trust the person, it's a lose. If the NAACP doesn't trust the person, it's a lose. If the committee doesn't trust the person, the equity committee, it's another loss. Lose, loss, whichever it is, it's not good. So we want a person that can relate and that can understand and that can be fair to everyone. If this person has even a child that is not getting the proper, I know you have your ESE department, but there should be an open ear. HR and equity should be that open ear. So that's, anything else on that? Okay. All right. What do we need to come back? Oh, and Dr. Bristol, I thought we'd talk about a little later. I said that when we said back to the discussion of wanting the board to take this vote.
Yeah.
So,
Because everything that was outlined here sounds, tremendous, but unless that vote is taken on what's here and ultimately we can confirm that what is going to be implemented in the strategic plan going forward, it's for naught, because potentially we could be agreeing to something that later on we find out will be taken out of the strategic plan and then not on the table anymore for us to discuss, and there's no vote to hold us accountable to the fact that we agreed that we're going to do this or we're not going to do that. So this is foundational. I don't.
yeah, and just 1 second before Dr. Moore, with the city of Fort Pierce, we do, the city manager has a strategic plan. And it looks at what the board or whoever thinks is responsible, what they think is important, and they'll say, okay, we don't have to worry about that one anymore. Cross it off.
Right.
And it's gone,
Right,
like that.
right.
So those
We
are
can't bring it
our
back because it's years of work. I mean, we won't be able to recapture what the former committee has done.
Right.
That work was done over the course of time. And to be honest, I'm thinking, well, if you don't vote up or down on their recommendations, how much faith should we have that when we make recommendations, you're going to vote up and down on what we suggest?
Yes. Dr. Moore.
Thank you. So I will bring an item Tuesday. We'll upload it tomorrow to acknowledge those recommendations and kind of highlight the path that we've used to incorporate those recommendations into the strategic plan, as well as the process that we would use forward in the years to come regarding the recommendations and how they will be used to drive the work moving forward. So I think that's, more than reasonable to ask.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Barefoot is also on the call if you wanted to acknowledge him.
Oh, I didn't see him. Chairman Barefoot, I apologize. Thank you so much. We've had a couple of discussions. Please don't count that to me as being rude, just not used to these glasses and looking around. And I used to talk in front of groups of people, but now I get nervous. So please forgive me. And you were going to talk about some things you wanted to bring back. And I made myself a note of achievement gap. Can we start talking about achievement gap at the next session? I didn't want to wait, every month out. I was thinking in maybe 2 to 3 weeks we could have the next meeting, because I'm feeling like I've lost time. So if that's okay with you, within, is 3 weeks good, or 2 weeks from tonight, or how do you feel?
Well, seeing as we're going to add more data, if we're now going to add the achievement gap to the things to discuss, I think 3 weeks would, because we already have data that we have to discuss
Yeah.
that we didn't get a chance to get to tonight. So I think 2 weeks would be rushing it a tad bit.
Yeah, no problem.
3 weeks is doable.
We're ambitious.
Thank you. All right. And so we've got achievement gap. We have this joint plan monthly progress.
And that's the one from April, correct?
So-
The
Yes,
latest
this is the one, April 2021 update.
We've got the criteria for the alternative disciplinary school and then the charter school data.
Because there were,
Okay.
I think there were a number of things that we, that I asterisks. I made asterisks for on there. I know the alternative was definitely one.
Alternative, that's important.
Did you mention the, were we going to readdress the hiring again?
I'd like to bring, I didn't want to give you too much. I had the hiring, but then I did have the minorities by school. So I can just send you that too. I already have that put out there. I think charter schools, can we wait till the next time? We might have a lot.
Yes, that
Yes.
is.
Getting
I
scared
just
of
put
that.
the thing about old business is it can stay there.
That's a
but it
long
just- it just
conversation,
needs to be
okay.
documented.
Stays there,
Yeah,
yeah.
as long as it
Okay.
stays there.
So that is,
Um,
I think that might be enough, maybe. You
Can I
agree?
make a
Sure.
request about your little charts?
Yes, ma'am. No, I didn't do that little tiny one.
Okay, you didn't do the little tiny one. But this was actually the format that was really useful. It has the header, it has the timeline, 2018, 19, 20, 21. The data was retrieved. That helps, page numbers, that just helps to be able, because I'm making it myself, but, you know, Ms. Patterson and I are looking at documents and saying, is this the one you're talking about? Is this the one, you know, and
Okay,
that, if the headers are in place, a format, that's all.
okay. All right, I'll try to make it look like this. Thank
And
you.
if we adopted a format across the board, what format do we use? APA, MLA, APA? Yeah, everything should be in APA format. That way we can compile it.
You know how long it's been since I've written a paper?
But it's not,
It's
it's,
as if you have
it's
to
the only way.
brush up on that.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
the only way that you can.
can you
find-
send her something on APA so I can get it figured out? And somebody's got to help me.
APA is not only for papers, research papers. It's so that when we're convening these kinds of discussions, we all can be able to grasp the same documents. And if I recall, well, let me leave that there. I don't wanna-
Yeah, it's almost too much for my brain tonight. I'd like to say thank you, Dr. Moore, for gathering the staff. And, you know, like Jermaine Jackson said, don't take it personal. And then for one more thing, one more movie, Matthew McConaughey. Now, I think he's good looking. I don't like guys, but I think he's good looking. And he's running for Texas. He's running for governor of Texas. But he had,
Is he really?
that's what I read. But he has,
What's your source?
Right, exactly.
I read a lot of news.
Source, exactly.
But he had the movie, he was in the movie A Time to Kill with Samuel Jackson.
Yeah.
And at the end, McConaughey got the jury to close their eyes and view and to turn the verdict around because they saw the one little kid who was abused, but he said, close your eyes, now see her as your little, I think he said she was blonde and cute and blue eyes or whatever. And then they could see that. So I'd like to, you know, for everybody to imagine these are your children that might come to the school district and be denied an opportunity or have to go to another district, or that might have to, I don't know, go to the alternative school because they did the same thing somebody else did or something. So we just want to have a mindset that loves all children. And I know I do. I don't know about other people. I had a good example. I know that lady did. And when I see kids out now and they're grown, 25 and 30, they are still respectful of me. They know I treated them right. And they are black, brown, white, all of my kids. I care for kids, and I think everybody else does too. Please, that's all we want, is to do the right thing. Oh, and this, we've got to figure out, well, maybe the next time, because this is huge.
This is,
So-
I believe that's the same information that's inside the binder. It's just now with numbers. It's numbered and with the headings and things. So we can replace whatever is in our original binder.
Okay.
With this.
All right. And so,
And at some point, we'll graduate to putting sections in so that we can all go through it and see exactly which pieces of data is being, used as artifacts, which data is being used for some other kind of analysis, because that's how we get into your mind. That's how we're able to understand that we're interpreting this information the same way. I don't want to be looking at data and you have it as an artifact. I mean, I know they can be both, but I want to understand how you're using it.
I agree.
Okay.
okay. So I guess, Ms. Brenda, you're going to be relying on me to send you this, what we're going to be looking for? Or everybody send their own, but just to make sure that we could do an achievement gap joint plan alternative. Sometimes it's hard to read my own handwriting. That being said, any other thing before we close out? I think that
Yeah, can we poll?
3 weeks from tonight, Thursday, good for everybody? Okay, yes, sir. All right. Once again, I know there are great people here because I worked with a lot of them. Thank you. We'll call this meeting to a close. It's 8:25. Have a wonderful weekend in the next 3 weeks. Oh, and Dr. Moore, one last thing, I'm sorry. If you have something that you want to invite us to, I might be able to break away. Sometimes it'll be having to meet with the police union because sometimes they want to talk long. No. Yeah. Yeah. Don't take that personal. Me and Al Betcher are great friends. I love my union guy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.